Well, thank you so much, all of you, for having me here today. I really, really appreciate being here. I've been a big fan of TiE for many, many years as an entrepreneur myself, and have attended TiE meetings in multiple countries. I personally have worked in about 25 countries across Africa and Asia and Central America, and started 6 enterprises, social enterprises globally. And I'm delighted to be here talking about XPRIZE, and then, even after that, talking about science fiction prototyping. So we've had a great day so far. A lot of LeapFrog thinking, a lot of listening to LeapFrog successes. We're going to make another leap right now, and this is a quantum leap, okay? So go with it, and let's see where we end up. But first, let me tell you a little bit about XPRIZE. We live in some amazing times, don't we? I mean, think about it. Just 150 years ago, you had to be royalty to really make a difference in the world. And today, it's you and I, common people, ordinary people like us, who can truly create breakthroughs, the kind of breakthroughs that can change the course of humanity. We heard from some of these people right here today, and you know some of these people, and it's pretty damn amazing. But if you want to really change the world, to really create the kind of breakthrough that changes the course of humanity, it's difficult, isn't it? And it's difficult to find those breakthroughs. If you are a seeker like me, on a quest, it's very hard to find those people. Those, you call them unicorns, you can call them whatever it might be. It's extremely difficult to find them. It is pretty much like looking for a needle in a haystack. So that begs the question, how do you make millions of haystacks reveal those precious needles? Well, that's exactly what we do at XPRIZE. We're an innovation engine. We put out these huge prize competitions to attract innovators from all over the world to come and solve a challenge. We don't excel in solutions. We're actually pretty solution agnostic. But we excel in defining a problem in a way that leads to these groundbreaking, change-making solutions. So why a prize? Because we believe that if you really want to create breakthroughs, again, those landmark breakthroughs, you need to incentivize people. People aren't just going to do it all on their own. And we also believe that there are only 3 things that incentivize people. And you can correct me later on if I'm wrong. The first one is money, because nothing happens without it, right? The second one is the chance to be the first in a new industry, because there is no second place. If you're an inventor or a founder of something, there's only, in the CEO search, there's no amount of money you can pay a search engine to put your name first. At XPRIZE, you invent something, your name will forever go down in history. And the third, change the world. And at the end of the day, we all have altruistic souls. Nothing makes us happier than when we think and behave in a way that is so much bigger than ourselves, right? So we offer these incentives through our prize competitions. Now, this whole notion of prize competitions isn't anything new, right? I mean, all of you have heard about challenges, probably participated in a challenge or two. You hear about them everywhere these days. But I don't know if you guys know that this model is really very, very old. In the 1600s, Napoleon Bonaparte, you guys remember your history lessons? Napoleon Bonaparte was invading Europe, and he was marching into Russia, and his army got defeated. Not because of his military prowess, but it got defeated by hunger and famine, right? And so Napoleon offered a 26,000 franc prize in 400 years ago, right? A 26,000 franc prize for the first person who could successfully preserve and transport food. a common candy maker by the name of Nicholas Appert came out with a revolutionary technology that we all still use till today, called canning. When was the last time you guys opened a can of food, or a jar of jam, or a bottle of tomato ketchup, right? When was it? Recently? Well, that's the kind of technology that Nicholas Appert created thanks to this prize 400 years ago. Another famous example of this model working and changing our world is the Longitude Prize. This was offered by the British Navy also 400 years ago. 25,000 pounds for the first person who could accurately measure longitude at sea. So they had figured out latitude with the position of the sun, but they hadn't figured out dead reckoning. You need longitude for dead reckoning. And John Harrison, who was a clockmaker in London, came up with a device that could measure this. He won the prize, but they didn't give him the money. He died a pauper because they could not believe that just an ordinary person could actually crack this and could figure this out. And of course, the big prize that influenced us at XPRIZE the most, you all know the story of Charles Lindbergh. He's the father of modern aviation. So Lindbergh's story, I'll refresh your memory, very simple. He was the first guy to fly across the Atlantic from New York to Paris, but very few people know that he was incentivized by a $20,000 prize put up by a man called Orteig. And Orteig had put this prize up 18 years before Lindbergh won. And people tried and failed, and a few people even died trying. But Orteig said, you know what? As long as there's an attractive enough incentive, somebody's going to win this damn thing. And they did, 18 years later. But the miracle wasn't that he made this flight and he won $20,000. The real miracle was that in the consequent 12 months after this prize was won, in 12 months, a whole new industry soared, the aviation industry. Anand and I were just exchanging how a lot of us are living in airports and planes these days. You know, this industry touches all of our lives, all of our lives. It was an absolute game changer. Within 12 months, aviation stocks soared, and a common man figured out that, hey, maybe I can fly too. Maybe I can do this as well. So these are the kinds of stories that inspired us at XPRIZE. And we created our first prize, our founder, Dr. Peter Diamandis, a brilliant guy. He's a doctor from Harvard Medical and an engineer, a PhD engineer from MIT. Brilliant guy, wanted to get into NASA, and he never could. He says it's because he's too short. He says that that's why I can. I don't know if that's the truth. He never got into NASA, and he was always frustrated, and he said, in the early 2000s, when everything is going up into suborbital space, yes, satellites, our smart grids are now controlled from there, telecoms controlled from there, why can't we go to space? Why is there not a commercial space industry? Because till then, only governments could go to space. So, inspired by the Orteig Prize and Lindbergh's story, he set out the first XPRIZE, which was basically for $10 million. And you had to do a few simple things for $10 million. You had to build a privately funded spacecraft that could go 100 kilometers into suborbital space. It had to have a passenger payload of 3 people, and it had to land and do the same flight again 2 weeks later. Now, why these parameters? Remember I said that we're good about defining the problem in a way that creates breakthroughs, in a very simple way? Well, it had to be privately funded because governments sure as hell weren't doing this. 100 kilometers into suborbital space was enough to prove the point, was enough where a lot of the satellites were, a lot of the work was getting done. 3 passengers, pilot, co-pilot, and 1 lay person, maybe a technician or whatever, who did not know how to fly. And lastly, a renewable spacecraft. The space shuttle takes 3 to 4 months to renew itself. Almost every external component of that shuttle has to be changed before it can take the next flight. That's not a commercially viable model. That's not a scaling model. So this is what we did, and this was the winner, Spaceship One. And when Spaceship One landed the second time in 2 weeks at Mojave Airfield in the desert, we brought Richard Branson out to the airfield, and he bought the company on the spot, and today it's called Virgin Galactic. So part of our model is not only to bring in innovators and inventors from around the world to come solve these problems, but we are very interested in investing in the entire ecosystem. We want to, in the innovation ecosystem, we want to make sure that our inventors and our innovators can get access to funding. They can get mentorship if needed. We don't do this ourselves, but we partner with others to do this. We partner with accelerators. We partner with labs. We partner with maker spaces. We partner with angel groups, etc. And we certainly talk to so many people like who are in the room today. So I'll put up my contact details at the end of this. Feel free to reach out to me. Don't be deterred if you don't get an answer for 3 days. I will get back to you at some point, or reach out to me again, because I'm really here to make those connections. Since then, we're in Bangalore, so I know everybody's heard about the Google Lunar XPRIZE, right? Okay, so $30 million to go back to the moon. 4 simple things. Again, you gotta be a privately funded company that builds a robot, take off from Earth, land on the moon, and row 500 meters and send back high-resolution digital imagery to prove that you're on the moon. And Team Indus, right here from Bangalore, is one of our front runners. I'm so delighted to say I'm a big, big fan of Team Indus. And nobody tells our story better than our teams themselves. So this is one of the prizes. Another prize, we're in final testing for this prize. It's the Qualcomm tricorder. For any of you who watched Star Trek, the tricorder was the medical device that the doctor had, and when you would come off planet, he would scan your body and tell you if you were alien or not, if there was something wrong with you or whatever it might be. So we thought, well, let's recreate the tricorder. So for our medical tricorder prize, you have to build a handheld device, so a device that fits in the palm of your hand, that can non-invasively diagnose up to 18 health conditions. And that includes communicable disease as well as chronic disease like stroke, cardiac, etc. So we are in final testing, live human testing, with tens of thousands of humans in San Diego Hospital right now. And again, so proud to talk about Team Dhanvantri, who is now in the top 8 finalists out of over 200 that we started with originally. And Dhanvantri is out of Chennai. So again, if you don't know them, look them up, reach out to them. They're an amazing team. And their device is, you know, even slightly smaller than a pager. Do you guys remember the days when we had pagers? Okay, so it's slightly smaller than a pager and thinner than a pager. That's their device. It's pretty damn cool. A couple of other prizes that we have. We launched a fantastic Global Learning Prize. This is a $15 million prize. This prize doesn't have his name on it, but it is primarily funded by Elon Musk. And it is for a piece of software, again, that goes on a tablet that can take a child in a zero literacy situation from zero literacy to a certain level of literacy and numeracy within 2 years. We're testing this prize. Right now, we just launched it. We just closed the team recruitment. We have almost 400 teams from 46 countries that have applied. And we're testing this prize in very, very rural Tanzania. So we're in Tanzania now, negotiating with the government to work in 2 or 3 villages there. And that'll be in a couple of years. The prize will be ready to test. We have a whole suite of ocean prizes. All of our ocean prizes, a lot of them are funded by Wendy Schmidt, Eric and Wendy Schmidt from their foundation, and they focus mostly on climate change. And so here we are now in India. XPRIZE has some amazing people on our board. We are very, very blessed to have attracted people of very high caliber. We have both the founders of Google are on our board, Elon Musk is on our board, James Cameron, the filmmaker, Wendy and Eric Schmidt, Ariana Huffington, and from India we have our very own Ratan Tata, who's been on our board since the Space Prize, and it was his dream to bring XPRIZE to India. And to really, but he said, when you come to India, don't do these big high-tech prizes that, 10 people in the world can possibly afford. So do prizes that can truly, truly impact the lives of 1 billion people. So we recently launched in India, and we're looking at all kinds of sectors. The first one, very close to my heart and the heart of others here as well, is in the water sector. I personally have worked internationally in the water sector for about at least a decade of my career. And we have just finished designing a very exciting prize in the future of water. This is a hardcore hardware prize. It's an engineering prize, basically. And there is a component to the competition that allows these technologies to go to market the day after the prize is won. Because that's something at XPRIZE we haven't been great at doing, and we're trying to get better at it. And certainly in countries like India, or if we're trying to do prizes for the rest of the world, for the other 6 billion people who need these technologies today, we really need to work on getting them to market as soon as possible. Also looking at sectors like waste, other sectors, learning, energy, renewable energy storage is of huge interest to us. I did a deep dive workshop right here in Bangalore last year. I deep dived in 3 cities in India with 6 different topics, getting experts from everywhere and talking about, what the real issues are and how this prize model can work. Infrastructure, transportation, a lot of these prizes are exportable, if you will, to other parts of the world. And by the way, none of the prizes we launch in India are just for India. These are all big global XPRIZes, but we want to run them from India. And the hope is that the rest of the world will come here to innovate. But of course, the bigger hope is that India will stand up to the challenge and walk away. Indians will walk away with these new innovations. And then another prize we're halfway through designing right now. In fact, we have our big expert visioneering workshop with about 40 experts in Delhi on Wednesday that I'll be running. And it's in women's safety. And we're trying to answer the question, can technology truly keep women safe? So we're going kind of crazy at this part of the design stage. It's the funnest part of my job, to be honest, when you actually get to design these challenges. And we're looking way out in the future at, embedded chips and intelligent sensors that can pick up on fight-or-flight syndrome and read the cocktail of hormones that are released in your body when you're in different kinds of situations. And we'd probably end up somewhere a little more modest than that. But we'll keep you posted. We hope to launch this prize on International Women's Day right here in India in February. So through our prizes, we call out to the world, call out to innovators everywhere. We believe that anyone and everyone can have an idea. You don't have to be a certain kind of organization or this registered entity or that registered entity. Anybody who has a crazy idea can participate in our competitions, because we truly believe that the day before something is a breakthrough, it's still a crazy idea. It's still something that the world and everybody around you is scoffing at. So we hope to hear a lot more of your crazy ideas as we start launching our competitions in India by the end of this year and early next year. But let me switch gears now and talk about some truly crazy ideas. So I want to talk today about a concept called science fiction prototyping. Anybody here familiar with that concept? Heard of it before? No, not you guys. Not quite, huh? You know, I was introduced to this concept just in March. And I was so blown away by it, and I could see some real great applications for it, certainly in my work, that I was, you know, I thought it would be nice to start sharing this with other people as well. So what is science fiction prototyping? Science fiction prototyping is storytelling with a twist. It's storytelling where fantasy and reality collide. The fantasy world of a future state, and the reality of your current business, technology, product, service, whatever it is, projected out into that future state. Now that future state is where, again, fantasy and reality collide. It could be a very pleasant daydream, or it could be a dystopian nightmare. But the point is, when you start putting, again, your technology, your product, your services, your business model out into that future state, you start seeing the practical and the ethical implications of what your future technology is going to do. So you can really see, how will this technology be accepted? What kind of reaction does it create among other human beings? What kind of governance structures are going to need to change? Policy that will need to be implemented in order for your future state of your technology to be accepted. Does that make sense? So, why? You may say, why do I need to do this? You know, yeah, it might be fun and all the rest of it. Why do I need to do this? Well, I'm not even going to talk too long about the state of disruption, right? We all know how disruptive exponential technologies are in our lives and are going to be in our businesses very, very soon. So what, you know, I'll throw out a couple of statistics. So every 7 years, technology, so in the next 7 years rather, in the next 7 years, technology is going to improve by 1 million times. 1 million times. This is exponential. 7 years, we all are forecasting, right, in your businesses in the future. 5 years, 10 years, 7 years is nothing. Where will your business be at that time? By 2020, the rate of innovations in the year 2000, the amount of innovations that came out in that year, by 2020, that rate of innovations, the amount of innovations are going to occur every 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds. Where is your business going to be? Where's your product going to be? What will your technology look like at that time? And that is the reason why you have to project out into even a wider future. Now, this is not future casting. You may say, well, you know, we do future casting in our companies. It's no big deal. Future casting is a lot more boring, first of all. But future casting is based on trends. It's based on financials. It's based on a lot of hard fact and only usually looks 10, 20 years out into the future. Science fiction prototyping is really taking this out to the edge to see how this will work in a future world. So what was the quote this morning, and then from the CEO of Sun Microsystems, that, you know, we did not foresee this future. The future changed on us. I think that's what you said. The future changed on us. Well, if you want the future to change on you, do nothing, right? Stay exactly where you are, do your little couple-year plans, and that's it. This is a way to look far, far beyond that. We know exponential technologies are becoming part of our everyday. You know, it's not so far-fetched anymore. We are all already talking about these. We're talking about AI. We're talking about the Internet of absolutely everything. We're talking about virtual reality. We're talking about augmented reality, which is holograms. We're talking machine learning all the time. We're talking about telematics, where every car, every road, every street sign is smart and is connected. Intelligent sensing in biometrics, all the advances made in genomics, different kinds of research going on in how do you upload one's mind. The whole movements that are starting up around these exponential technologies, like the transhumanist movement or the post-human movement, that talks about this accelerated rate of technology, exponentially accelerated rate of technology, that all is leading to this big technological singularity. Do you guys know about the technological singularity? Whether you believe it or not, the technological singularity is defined as a time when we, as human beings, will design an intelligent machine that will be able to improve itself. And once it starts improving itself, it will lead to this cascade of new generations of intelligence that is beyond our own human comprehension and perhaps our human control. Now, of course, there are some that say this is coming in 2030, and some that are saying that it's coming in 100 years. This might all sound very fictitious to you, but the truth is this is exactly where we're headed. This is not just science fiction. It is indeed science reality. We have been proving this with a couple of our XPRIZes, and a lot of our sister organizations like Singularity University and a whole bunch of other researchers that are part of our ecosystem know that this is coming and are actively working in this particular space. And so again, this might sound like big talk, science fiction, etc. But how many times has science fiction truly impacted reality? Think about the movies we all like. You guys remember Minority Report, right? Ladies, Tom Cruise, you guys remember that, right? So in Minority Report, right, you know, the 3D gesture recognition. That gave rise to a whole bunch of motion sensing, screens, touch screens that we use today, etc. In Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, they were using tablets 50 years ago in that movie. In early Star Trek, the communicator was just a precursor to our mobile phones. So this stuff is really happening, and a lot of big companies are looking at science fiction prototyping to understand what their future tech will look like. Another example of how science fiction influenced our real science, liquid-fueled rockets that we use to go out to space. Goddard, the founder of those, the inventor of that, he got all of his inspiration from H.G. Wells. Even Einstein would do these thought experiments. How did a lowly Swiss patent clerk come up with the theory of reality? Relativity. I knew there was a word there. Sorry. How did he do that? He would sit and meditate for days on end and do these thought experiments. Think to himself, okay, if a train is taking off, picks up that kind of speed, another train in a parallel universe can do this, can do that. How does physics affect all of this? He would think these things through. Science fiction prototyping, in a way, is doing just that. So, without any further ado, let me tell you how we do it. It's really very simple and a lot of fun. You do this exercise in 3 stages. And this was really influenced by a big exercise that Intel Corporation did some years ago with 4 different science fiction authors and all of their leadership and their engineers and their researchers. They huddled up into 4 different areas of their future business, and then they did the science fiction prototyping to understand what kind of products they should create. So very simply, the first thing you do is you set up your world. You try to understand who the protagonist is in this world, in your particular story. Color this world. What does the future look like in this world? How does it feel? What kind of other technological advances have taken place that in this world we now take for granted? Place it in a place and a time in the future. Then you create a problem. Kind of the same, probably sort of problem that you're trying to solve right now in your business. How will that problem factor into that future world? Does technology enhance that problem? Does it solve it? Is it the reason why that problem was created in the first place? And then you move to, how do you solve that problem? What is the final outcome? So this is in brief what the exercise is. Now, in a perfect world, I would have loved to have broken up this room and we would have done our own little science fiction prototyping exercises and you would have had a great time. But unfortunately, we don't have the time or the infrastructure to do that. So I did this workshop last night with 12 brave TiE volunteers who showed up and didn't know what the hell they were getting into. And we did this workshop. And we have created a series of 3 stories that they would like to showcase to you. Now, we've gone overboard in these stories. We didn't have a real corporation that we were working with or a real technology that we were working with. We just had a lot of fun with these stories. But I want you to remember one thing. In the middle of all these prototypes that you create must be the individual man. The reason why we do it in a story format, the reason why this is done with a protagonist, a hero, is because if you cannot relate your technology, your future business model, product, service, whatever it might be, to the human condition, then it's never going to work, right? On its own, technology doesn't do anything. It is the interrelation of how we interact with it. And here's the kicker. So you know the pace of technology that's growing, at this pace and at that pace, and there's all the Moore's laws and the charts to show you all of that stuff. But think about this. Our human brains, we haven't had an upgrade in half a millennia. We have not been rebooted in a really long time. What you see right now, what you have, modern man, is 500,000 years old. Was the last time we had any kind of evolutionary step. So again, you have to relate it to man, because if you don't, then it's just not going to work. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce these 3 stories to you. We're going to go in chronological order. The first story is going to be set in 2099, right? And it's an allegory for the future of finance. So we're keeping with the themes of today. The second story is set in 2147, and it's a love story. Is it set in Varanasi? And it's set in Varanasi. And the third story is a story of a completely dystopian future set in 2300, 300 years from now. And obviously, it's in retail. So, without any further ado, I'd like to invite the first storytellers up. Sit back, close your eyes, don't think too much, just enjoy it.